Hello and welcome to the Outdoorsy Educator podcast, where stories become lessons and every journey has something to teach us. Every week I sit down with people from all walks of life to hear their adventures, explore their experiences, and uncover the insights that have shaped them along the way. Whether it's from the outdoors, the classroom, or any other path, each conversation offers a fresh perspective on learning, growth, and what it means to truly connect with the world and the people around us. And on this week's episode of the Outdoorsy Educator podcast, we have Briana Gervat. Briana, how are you today?
I'm wonderful, Alasdair. How are you?
Oh, doing great. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. Why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself?
My name is Briana Gervat, and I am a writer, a poet, and a photographer. And 4 years ago now, it's crazy to think it was 4 years ago, I went on a 500-mile journey walking the length of the Western Front. And yeah, and
That's,
then
I
I
mean, just
spent
amazing. Yeah.
because I'm a historian. I'm also a historian. So I spent so 4 years ago I went away and walked the Western Front, and then I spent the next 3 years writing a book about it. And it's almost as if the journey continues. The journey itself took 36 days, but as I continue to evolve and think about what it means, it just means so many different things in so many different ways. So I'm gonna spend some time exploring what that means and sharing it with people that are interested in the outdoors and interested in history and nature and all that other stuff.
I love it. So I think many of our listeners, like myself, embarrassingly, I'd never heard of the Western Front Trail. Didn't, and I'm sure that this is not uncommon. So why don't we start there? What is this trail and what drew you to it?
Well, I up until I walked the Western Front Way, I didn't know that there was a Western Front Way either.
Right.
You go to Europe and you walk the Camino, you hike in the Dolomites, maybe you go to the Balkans and you do those kinds of hikes. Or even go with the fjords and people do that, or they go to Scotland to go to the Highlands.
Yes.
And I mean, those are beautiful. Why wouldn't you go? Why wouldn't you spend time there? But when I discovered that there was the Western Front Way, I was like, this is right up my alley. You get to
Right.
walk through history, and it was a path that was conceptualized during the war, during the Great War, during World War One, by a soldier named Alexander Gillespie. And he imagined as he was watching all the war happening, all the fighting taking place, that the path of war would one day become a path of peace.
Oh, lovely. Right.
Yeah. So he wrote about it in a letter to his professor. And that letter, like there was billions of letters that were sent during the war, and it was refound in 2015, 2014. And it was right along it was around the centennial of the war. So there was a lot of commemoration, a lot of memorials, a lot of honoring taking place at that time. So the people that developed the Western Front Way really went after it and decided that that's what they were going to do. They were going to develop this path of peace that was dreamed about 100 years before.
That's just incredible. I mean, again, my assumption would have been that the concept of a trail and a path came after World War One. Somebody looked at the map and thought, why don't we create something? So to hear that it happened beforehand is just incredible.
Yes. Well, I think that I
Yes.
can't imagine being there in the dark or in the snow or the rain and thinking, how much longer must this war go on? And not dreaming of a time of peace. And then looking around and being like, maybe peace can be found in this place where there's so much war. So I think that, we don't know. I mean, we do know what was in the minds of soldiers. We see it in their art, we see it in their
Hmm.
letters, we see it in some of the images that they captured and stuff like that. And we see it in their poetry. So I think that, I don't know, I think that we are hopeful and we don't get, those of us that survive are the ones that don't get lost in the sadness.
Absolutely. So it's one thing to read about a trail like this and to even be inspired by it and find out more, but you made the decision to go and walk it. You weren't just going to read about this in a theoretical sense. You wanted to see, to feel, to breathe in this trail. But it also happened, I believe, around the time of COVID. I'd love for you to walk us through a bit of that journey, How did you decide I'm actually going to do this, to doing it, and how COVID impacted that decision?
Oh, that's such a great question. So it was at the tail end of COVID and the world was starting to open up a little bit more. You're located in Texas and I was in Southeast Georgia. So I think that
Mhm.
it's safe to say that both of us had a little more opening than other parts of the world.
Yes, yes.
But once I knew that I could travel and be in other parts of the world, I got really excited about it because I felt very claustrophobic, very contained, and I've always wanted to travel. And COVID, for many of us, COVID, stopped us in our tracks for a myriad of reasons. And so once I learned about this Western Front Way, I just thought, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm going to France. And there were so many times during COVID that people related it to the 1920s. They're like, oh, the roaring 20s, everything else like that. And it's like, well, what happened before that to make that situation happen? So COVID was a huge factor in it because I missed the world. I missed interacting with people. I missed spending time in foreign places and really feeling like you were connected to people. It felt so disconnected that I craved it. I longed for it. There was an ache in my heart that was only going to be found traveling again.
Right, and you've mentioned traveling again twice. I think once you get that bug, it's really hard to step away from it. What were some of the journeys that you'd experienced prior to this that I'm assuming inspired your desire and love for travel?
Yeah, no, I mean, I've always traveled. So as soon as I graduated
Nice.
college, I just packed my bag, did the backpacking thing throughout Europe for a couple of months. And then I lived in China, taught English over there.
Right?
It's crazy because you're, in China, you have, and we were talking about before, no connection to the internet and everything. And you like, I
Hmm.
had to go to an internet cafe and you had limited access. So it was cool. Then I went to Australia. Then I went to Cambodia where I went to, the killing field. So it was, and when I was in Europe, I went to Dachau. So it was always this macabre fascination with war and how we do the most terrible things to one another when we have so much beauty, when there's so many wonderful people out there. How can we have such lovely experiences with people and then have the opposite side of that? And that was something that really was a conflict for me that I really wanted to really learn about and think about and mull over. And then after that,
Yeah.
what's that? Go ahead.
Oh, I think it's just fascinating because when I was reading about your trail journey, what you're saying is very similar to what I was thinking. Because I was curious how, when you hiked on the Western Front Trail, in my mind, there must be a balance of this is stunning, this is beautiful, but there's also, I assume, some kind of emotional weight of knowing that you're walking in an area where there was such tragedy.
It was almost unshakable. You had to carry that with you as you were walking. But as
Yes.
you're walking through these devastating landscapes, right? But then you're seeing the most gorgeous sunrise. You're hearing bird song. You're hearing the wind go through the trees, and you think, my goodness, how am I so lucky to be in such a beautiful place and yet still have to reflect upon something so tragic?
Yes, absolutely. I think I'm thinking of other, trails that we all know. And while every trail naturally has a history, this is something different. This is something special, and I feel like the gravity of it is more than perhaps any other trail that I can really think of.
No, absolutely. I think that is what really connects to. And then when you learn about, the Western Front Way, you also learn about the other migratory trails that people went on. Like after I studied World War One, obviously I moved on to World War Two, and then I'm Polish, and you learn about how during the war, the Russians took the Poles to Siberia, and then when they joined the side of the Allies, they're like, okay, have fun. And then the Poles did this trek from Siberia to Iran.
Goodness.
Yeah, and it was and you hear about all, so you think about these paths that people went on in search of peace, in search of safety. And so it's just that the Western Front Way doesn't stand alone, but it's almost like it encapsulates all the other things that people have lived through and survived to want to get to a better place.
I mean, the human spirit is just incredible, and I feel like, yeah, you're personifying it by telling those stories. It just mind blowing when we think of our day to day, struggles and troubles we all have. To think of what these people went through is just incredible.
Yeah, and that so many of them went on to, to live these magnificent lives or create a deeper, more meaningful life despite what they had experienced. It's just we are so lucky in so many ways. We get so caught up in the minutia of everyday life, but we forget that we are part of the human collective, that these people experience these things. And, if we just open up the door or the window to let some of their stories in, maybe we can understand life a little better.
I think that's a great lesson for all of us. Absolutely. When I was reading about your incredible journey, the forest of Verdun appeared to be particularly impactful. I, again, must admit, I don't know where exactly that is or why it would be impactful on you. Could you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. So the Forest of Verdun it's after the Vosges. So there's mountains. If you think about it, like the Vosges as an extension of the Alps, they're the tiny foothills. So you said you
Hmm.
walked the Appalachian Trail in Jersey. So it's maybe a little taller than that, a
Right.
couple of hundred more feet or a thousand more feet or something. But the mountains are more subtle. And then you get out of the Vosges and you go into further into Alsace. And then you get to the great battlefield, the great fortress of Verdun, where the longest battle of World War One took place. And
Ah,
yeah, and then
right.
oh yeah, the longest battle. So it was supposed to start in the beginning of February, but then there was this whiteout snowstorm. So the Germans were going to surprise them, Uh,
Yes.
and then they had to delay it, but the French were already, at the great fortress of Verdun. And so this battle started at the end of February and did not end until 300 days later.
300 days. That's incredible.
Yes. And every day, military bombardments and barrages and just shells, enormous, enormous shells would just be launched. There wasn't a spot in Verdun that wasn't destroyed. So you have this entire forest that was dwindled down to like matchsticks. And you know that because you learn about it. But you get there and you're like, wait, hold on, but there's trees and you know, nature has returned and there's hiking trails and there's all of this stuff. So it's just you get to Verdun and you think what we talked about before as well,
Hmm.
feel the heaviness of the war. You can't escape it. There's no running away from it. It is just there and you have to move through it.
That's just amazing. And I think it's impossible for these things to not have a substantial impact on your outlook going forward.
Oh, no,
Mm.
absolutely. No, Verdun scared the ever living crap out of me. It
Right.
really did because, and I'm camping out in it. So I have my tent and I'm walking through the forest of Verdun and I just, it just you go to those places. I don't know if you've been to like Gettysburg or even I don't know if the Alamo is like that or certain places that
Hmm.
you go and you feel it and you can't avoid it and you have to sit with it and to walk from one end of the battlefield to the other and know what took place there. It's a wild, wild experience.
I mean, I'm feeling truly inspired to find out more because it sounds it. I was curious as when you were experiencing all these things and seeing these things, what did this journey really teach you about yourself, if anything, that you perhaps didn't expect?
I think it re-solidified the unwavering belief that I am incredibly stubborn and pig-headed.
Right? Okay.
Like, no, 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 I'm gonna keep on going. What did it tell me about myself? That I think I fell deeper in love with history in the process of it, and I didn't let myself be angered by it as much. It was almost like a cathartic experience because you learn about moments in history and you get so fired up and you're like, I can't believe this happened. And then you walk the Western Front and you experience what happened for 4 years. And then you think about what is happening in the world today. And so you relate to it and you put it in its proper place. And it
Mm,
not that
right.
you can accept it. There's no way you can accept things, and that we shouldn't do that as humans. We should try to use our moral imagination to get to the place that we all want ourselves to be or imagine humanity to be in terms of progress. But I think that it gives you a little bit of room to breathe.
I love that. Right. That's it's fascinating. I'm assuming again, I was thinking about your journey this morning, and now you've mentioned backpacking around Europe and China especially. A lot of the places you seem to have traveled to, there's a lot of people there. I'm assuming on the trail there was moments of solitude. It's certainly not a hugely popular trail, I'm assuming. And I was wondering how that played into the journey. I'm assuming there was quite a lot of time by yourself,
Oh, I love to be alone.
right?
I'm so good at being alone. Like we talked about before. I love
Yes.
people. I love
Yep.
talking to them. I love spending time with them. I love my family, everything else. But if I can be alone for a little while, like that's perfect.
Hits the spot. That's we're
Yeah.
very similar. I'm a people person. I'm around people all the time, but going away for a couple of nights camping or something is just the best. It's such a great reset.
Oh yeah, no, and I felt like that was especially after COVID, walking alone in the forest of France was exactly what I needed. It was almost as if like France opened up its arms and said, "Here, like come be with me. You don't have to be with anybody else. Just be with me."
And it's such a fascinating story, and I think you could have done this journey, and most people would just, it's a story that you relay to people and you tell people, but you went another direction, and you have written a book. I'd love to hear about what made you decide was that the plan all along, or did you decide afterwards? And what was the experience and the metaphorical journey of writing a book like?
So, writing a book is never an easy journey. And I relate this to World War One, and Tolkien fought in World War One. So it's like going to the depths of Mordor. It's like
Right.
Frodo, but Frodo had Sam, Frodo had, and so, but you're by yourself. So, I went away with the intention of writing a book. I didn't know what the book would look like. I didn't know what the
Okay.
story that I would tell, but I would relate it to the world that we know today and try to speak about history as well. But World War One is such a massive undertaking. You can't even I can barely skim the surface. Like, you go you there's no way I can convey all that I wanted to convey about the war that one hasn't already been written, but also what I am more of a writer and a poet than I am a historian. So it was interesting. So the first parts of the war, the book were, kind of just vomiting on paper, regurgitating everything,
Right.
and then refining and sifting through. So the metaphorical journey was really uh there was a journey within itself. How
Mhm.
do you write a story that appeals? We here in America and in the rest of the world, we have so many people that are so caught up in politics and taking sides and extremism and thinking you're right and they're wrong. So how do I write a story that's more universal?
That sounds like a huge undertaking. Because you're right,
Yeah.
you have to be able to let all the prejudice and bias that we all carry about different things to some degree, having to let that go to write this book. Just fascinating. And I also think that so many of us think we have a book in us. And I think it's beyond commendable when people actually do it because I think many people, like I said, have that vision and that dream, but very few do it. So well done, first of
Thank,
all,
thank you. Thank
on getting to
you.
that finish line because that I think is underrated in terms of achievement. We're kind of coming to the end of our time together, but I always want to ask my guests what the word success means to you, and if that word has changed how you perceive success from before you going on the Western Front Trail and writing your book to afterwards.
Finishing, completing the Western Front was just, that was a success within itself. But my ultimate goal, my ultimate,
Hmm.
the top tier of the success that I long for is a quiet house in the countryside of France or Spain and chickens and maybe a cow. Success would be to be able to continue writing throughout my life and that being the way I make my living and the way I live, to fully embody the life of an artist in a very singular way. But also, having friends and family come visit and stuff like that. So success would be, I think it's ever changing because it's
Yeah.
just, you wake up and you have a cup of coffee, maybe that's success. You wake up or have a wonderful conversation with someone like you, that's success. And it's just those small moments of breakthrough that get you to the next level or the next place you want to go.
I love that. I love that. Um, Other than your own book, has there been a book that's been particularly impactful on your life? Not necessarily the best book, but something that has just impacted you in your life.
Oh gosh, there's a closet, there's a lifetime of books that have made a difference, but my favorite book.
Yes.
And you want to talk about success. If my
Hmm.
book makes it really big, my goal is to get this book with an illustration. But my favorite book is The Night Circus by Aaron Morgenson.
Okay. I've never heard of that. Tell me a little bit about it.
So it's about these two magicians that are in competition with one another, and every few years they have to pick people that are going to compete with one another, so that way they are who wins and who loses. And there was a boy and a girl that were chosen, and they wind up falling in love. But the whole idea was the competition takes place within this world of a night circus.
There's something very romantic about that vision of a night circus.
And it's so interesting because it's all in black and white, and I think there's these little wisps of red throughout it, but it's black and white, and this little boy comes in, and it's just this whole story that is so magical. And the people that go to this night circus, they're called rêveurs, which in French means dreamers.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it. I'll be looking this book up without a doubt.
it's a beautiful book. And then she wrote The Starless Sea too. So when I think about my favorite books, I love that kind of fantasy, romantic, um, imagine realm where you think, oh my gosh, where did that idea come to you? And how that's success to be able to sit there and take that story and put it on paper.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm not sure if you are ever going to walk the Western Front Trail again, but if we pretend that you are, if you could take one person with you for the whole time, you get to pick their brains, talk to them, learn from them. It could be somebody in your life, famous, somebody dead, somebody alive, anybody in the world. Who would you like to hike this trail with?
Ooh.
Anyone. And
I,
it can be more than one person if you so choose.
oh my gosh, can I pick all of the poets and writers that lived and survived the Great War? Like, can I have Tolkien? Can I have C.S. Lewis? Can I have Wallace Stevens? Wallace Stevens didn't fight in the war, but he wrote one of my favorite poems. And he, after the war, he took letters from French soldiers and made them into poems.
Of course you
Yeah,
can.
I,
And
I
that just
want all
sounds
the poets.
all
I,
the poets.
all the
Yeah,
poets.
a poet's trek. I love that
Yes.
idea.
Oh my God. That's actually a
Yeah,
really good idea. Just a poet's trek through the Western Front Way.
that's right. Don't forget me if that happens. You
You
know,
can come.
I'll
You
come
know what?
join you.
I want you to come. That's what, all these dead people and you.
That's right. Perfect. Perfect. Well, if people want to learn more about you, find your book, and just generally, maybe if they want to ask you a question, where can people find you and find your book?
Interestingly enough, my
Hmm.
Facebook, I mean, my Instagram page just got permanently disabled by
Oh no.
bots, by AI. So can't find me there until I figure out how to get back on there. Apparently posting about, trees and spring or just,
How dare you, right?
I know, getting outside, you know.
For shame.
I
Yes.
I know, I know. But they can find me on my they can find me through my webpage, which is you can just look up brianagervat.com. And if you want to be real professional, you can go on LinkedIn and connect with me.
Fantastic. I just joined LinkedIn last year, so I'm slowly getting used to it. So I'll see if I can find you.
I will find you too.
Awesome. Well, Brianna Gervat, I cannot thank you enough for sitting down with me today. This has been fascinating.
Yes, thank you. It was so much. It's been a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you again to this week's guest, and I hope today's episode was as enjoyable for you as it was for me, and perhaps even inspired your next adventure. If you did enjoy the show, please be sure to subscribe, leave a review, or follow us wherever you get your podcasts. You can find more information at theoutdoorseyeducator.com or follow us on Instagram, TikTok, or Facebook. Until next time, thank you so much for listening to the Outdoorsy Educator Podcast.